Hello, Todd. Welcome to Podcast versus Player. Thank you very much for being here today. We're absolutely honoured and just generally happy to have you on. It's lovely to have a fellow podcaster on, certainly one from across the pond. So hello to you.
Hi, thank you so much for doing this. I was very excited. You were among the very first people I talked to about sitting in, so thanks for having me on.
Aww, you can come back again.
Yeah, I mean, off that's fine. Anytime you need anything from us, I don't care if it's in Missouri or Manchester. I don't care. We'll be there. You got it.
Nice.
But there is obviously a very good reason that we wanted to have you on today, and something that we're very excited for you to talk about with us a little bit as well. And that's your book. You've got a book coming out, Inside Video Game Creation. So, first things first. It's a kind of a list of interviews, really, isn't it, with people from varying degrees of success, if you want to put it that way, or popularity maybe within the video game industry and development world. How did that come to be?
Yeah, that's first of all, that's a decent way to kind of look at it. Basically, what the situation is I run a podcast of my own called GameDev Breakdown, and I speak with it. The gist of the show is it's game dev talk. So, you know, we set aside an hour, I have people on as often as I can, and we just talk about what they do, whether that is that they're an indie developer or they work for a giant AAA studio. I've spoken with other authors in the industry, journalists, anybody who sort of does what they do in this space. I love to hear their stories, how they got into it. And the book is a collection of, I picked, 11 or 12 people to talk to and get their stories sort of captured in more of a condensed sort of experience in each chapter. And it's a Q&A style interview in each chapter. My question, their answers, and it sort of captures a picture of the video game landscape of right now. So, and also there's some good historical stuff as well. We talked to one person who was way back from the Lucasfilm Games days, and
I did see that, yeah.
All the way up through Borderlands 3. So yeah, a little bit of everything.
Yeah, well, there's actually one of the interviews that I did see that you'd done on your own YouTube channel, which is GameDev Breakdown on YouTube, if anyone wants to go and have a look at that, obviously. It was with a guy called Max Pears.
Yes.
I did a bit of research on him just to sort of see, because obviously I suppose the biggest thing that he's working on at the moment is Cyberpunk, which is
right,
huge from all elements of the industry. But his own personal portfolio, it showed him starting with a game called Truck License 2, which I've never heard of, and I can't imagine there's a huge amount of people that have.
Right.
Working into another small indie company, then going straight into The Division, and then from The Division into Cyberpunk. And it just seemed like, a huge jump in terms of what he's actually contributed and what teams he was going to be working with. Is that something that through your kind of interviews and discussing this with people within the industry, is that fairly typical?
It's a good question, because I come from an area in the US where we do not have a strong industry presence whatsoever. So I knew I wanted to make games when I was 12 years old, as soon as I realized someone made them. So, but I got through college and I didn't really want to pick up and move. So entry stories into the industry have always fascinated me. That might be sort of a foundation for what I ended up doing here. And because I never really got to do it, I had to go it alone and do my own indie games and stuff, which was fine. I wouldn't trade it now. But yeah, stories like that fascinate me, and they all sound so different. Max Pears is an interesting guy because he's a great designer. He is an author of a design book of his own. He runs the level design
combat
lobby.
Mechanics, I think it was, wasn't it? How to combat mechanics, something like that. Yeah,
designing combat. He's starting a series of books. Yeah. And also does the Level Design Lobby podcast. So, people can check him out there. But it was an interesting discussion because I didn't want to sound like how did you get to do this? You know, he's a very talented, very smart guy.
Right?
I
get it. Like, it's such a leap. Like, I mean, it must be a testament to his talent, clearly. You know, I can't imagine that everyone gets such a break.
The progression was meteoric for him, and I'm glad to say he seems to have risen to the challenge. I mean, a lot of us would have sunk like a rock in that situation, I think. So he did great.
Yeah, I mean, given the kind of the public pressure that's on CD Projekt Red at the moment, it can't be an overly comfortable place to work, I suppose, until things settle down a little bit.
That's why it was a difficult conversation, if I'm being totally honest, because he's a very nice guy. I consider him a friend.
Seemed to, yeah.
But the interview we had was at a time when, and he, we haven't talked about this since, but I mean, it was at a time when he knew what was going on and other people did not. And he was, I'm surprised he came on the show at that time. It was sort of a testament to what a nice guy he is, but we were not able to talk about too much at that time. But we got to talk about the book, so.
Yeah, which is, which in itself is, it's kind of, I mean, that's my impression of, your website, the book that you've written, the kind of the YouTube content that you put out at the moment. It seems to be very much focused on the back end of the development side of things rather than the front end, which is what people are going to see, they're going to play. And that's usually the only kind of exposure that people will have when it comes to video games. It's they'll go and buy a game, they'll play it, and they'll go, well, this is terrible. Everyone should be fired who made this.
Right.
They can't see beyond, the actual work that goes into it. So, I mean, is that kind of like a niche that you've carved out for yourself where you're looking more at the back end of things and trying to get people's stories, like you say, to kind of put them forward to the public to say, these are the guys that actually do the hard work. They're the ones in the trenches and they're the ones that are going to be actually doing all the, the actual heavy lifting to get these into stores and onto people's computers.
I think so. I think if there's anything unusual about my perspective at all, it's that I'm a software developer, I've gone through technical training, I've done my own indie games, and so to me, I am able to appreciate in games other people look at and say, this wasn't for me, I can still go, God, but look what they accomplished. You can sort of imagine what goes into the smaller elements, and I'm happy to say we're getting to a point where other people are getting much better at that. The average player understands enough to go, okay, yes, they're working hard on this, it takes a team, more of that information is out there, but that's because of, journalists and authors and content creators who have pulled back that curtain so we could kind of see it.
Yeah, and I think that's always been the interesting part for me, because I think it's so easy for people to just go on a big old rant about, how disgusting it is that they pre-ordered something and then, 6 months later there's still nothing. I mean, I think me and Callum are both very much in the camp of, if it takes as long as it takes to get it right, that's how long it should take.
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
I think that... Sorry, mate.
No, go on. I was just going to say, I don't think that enough people... everything that happened with CD Projekt Red, I wouldn't say any of that was down to the developers themselves, rather than the higher-ups that this game's got to go out on time. And again, like Dan was about to say before I rudely interrupted, I'd rather wait and just have a better game and a stable game. I mean, to be honest, I didn't really have many bugs and glitches when I was playing it, so I think I had maybe 3, and none of them were game-breaking. They were more funny than anything else.
Yeah.
Although I remember receiving a video from Dan, I think you were in a shop, and this car's just doing donuts through the wall on its own.
Yeah, I'd called for the car and it was just going around in circles, just hitting people. As it's a bit weird, but the thing is, though, I think that things like that, when you see them, it's it's annoying, but it's kind of also a testament to the scale of the work that goes into some of these huge blockbuster games. And I mean, in your kind of experience in dealing with people who may have had these kind of meteoric rises, like Max might have done, is it, where does the sort of the enjoyment begin and end? Is it when you're working in these smaller companies and you've got a lot more control maybe, and you've got a lot more input, but maybe it's not very secure, no one's really going to see it or hear of it ever, but then you get into a huge developer, your actual control and your input is going to be severely reduced, but you've got job security, you've got but I don't know. I don't know if you'd feel that it would be your name would be kind of tarnished as having a specific thing against, like, was it Assassin's Creed Unity or something like that? You know, it's Unity, like infamous, like, you know, really, you know, kind of almost cobbled together in a sense, and then rushed out the door by the publishers. You know, where do people kind of find that happy medium? Is it when they're still up and coming, you know, they might be working with smaller projects, or is it when they've actually made it and they've gotten to that kind of a height?
That's the magic question, really. And it's something I've learned a lot about since I started in this sort of content creation space. From my perspective, I came up as a kid with really what I considered to be no shot at getting into the industry. So a lot of other people have much different stories. They get out of college in the right city at the right time, and they might go straight to EA. So you have people jumping in all the way across this spectrum. And what I've learned is, from talking to a lot of people, there's kind of an interesting phenomenon where the people on one side always want to see what life is like on the other side. The indies want to be pros, and the pros wish they could go indie. And it becomes about what you're willing to sacrifice. Do you want to give up control, or do you want to give up, you know, job security or financial security? What can you live without? What are you willing to do? So it's in a way that sort of unites everyone who works in game development, and it's the source of so many interesting conversations on Twitter and Reddit, and people who, you know, I made a game with my friend, and like, okay, cool, I work at Gearbox, let's talk about audio design. It's kind of magical to see it, you know? But what's so weird about that is, on the far end, on the pro side, you see things that are locked down and strictly controlled by publishers, and they put people on these wild rides where, sorry, we announced a date of June 1st, and make it happen. I don't care what happens. If you want a job on June 2nd, you make it happen.
Yeah.
And that has led to these nightmare scenarios where even the successes have cost people their livelihoods, relationships, their sense of well-being. It's a terrible thing to see. And with a business that's started to earn that much money at that and done business at that scale, I don't know how you put the brakes on that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think EA is kind of the prime example for taking over companies and talent that come along with them, rushing something out, it fails, and then they just close the studio.
Yeah,
they stand apart. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I don't get it. I mean, because I don't really, you know, I'm more on the front end, I suppose, more than on the back end. But you know, we do try and engage with small developers. You know, we've had a couple of interviews with some guys that have made smaller games. My old housemate, funnily enough, he was a developer working at Frontier, and then went on to Cloud Imperium, working on Star Citizen. He's moved off to a new company, so we're going to ask him to sort of join us next week, so we can kind of have a chat over his kind of experience. But I think you've kind of opened up my eyes, having watched some of the interviews that you've done on YouTube with, you know, sitting down with some of the people, even, you know, some of these are quite big players, you know, there's like senior VFX artists and things like that, you know, they're people that have got a real control in, you know, in how these projects work, and getting them on and showing a more human side of it. And honestly, Callum, I think we're in the wrong business here, mate. I think we should stop talking about games and start talking about how to make games. Not that either of us have got any experience.
I was going to say, the aforementioned bugs in Cyberpunk is already better than any game that me and Dan could make.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
If I could make a game that was just the bugs from Cyberpunk, I'd be happy with that.
That's the thing. It's easy to finish any project and go, I am a genius, look what I've done. and you unleash it on the world, and you find out something different. And I completely understand, because it's easy to, like, you're hunched over and you're working month after month after month, you're out of money. You just want it out the door. It's publish this today and get it out the door, and maybe it's ready, maybe it's not. And I understand both sides of it, but God, I wish we could get along a little better in the process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really don't get. I mean, we've covered this on previous podcasts before, like some of the, you know, the hate and the death threats and things like that. That it's I just don't. It's beyond comprehension as to how people are that entitled that they think that they deserve this product. They haven't done anything towards it or paid anything towards it unless they pre-ordered it, I guess. But it's way too late down the line, like development line, before that becomes a factor. But they expect absolute perfection.
I think there's a mixture of both, though. Like, on one hand, it's the worst kind of people, like, threatening. I mean, like, again, CD Projekt Red, the death threats and stuff that they received from the initial release. But on the other hand, these are people that are, like, extremely passionate about something that... If somebody got that passionate about something I was making, like, I wouldn't be happy with the death threats, like, don't get me wrong there, but just the fact to know that there's a huge mass of people that are so passionate about this one thing that I'm making that they're prepared to just go beyond what's considered appropriate, really, more for lack of a better term. Don't condone it in the slightest, but...
Right. It's an interesting thing where we've sort of all acknowledged that, especially if you're an indie, you need to spend a good amount of your time, maybe 30-40% of your time, marketing what you're doing, building a community, running that Discord, getting people subscribed to that newsletter, running a forum. You want people engaged with your content at all times. And if you've done a great job, you get people deeply, deeply passionate about your work. But that comes with a downside. There are going to be people who don't have a healthy relationship with what you're doing or just what they're doing with gaming. And they're going to be present in that community, and it might not go well. So, I mean, obviously, I don't consider developers complicit in any sort of death threats they receive or any sort of abuse or toxicity, anything like that, clearly. But it is a thing that we try to hook people in and get them as engaged as possible, so we have to run a community and then deal with the fallout, and it's not really fair. But it's it's another one of those things. What do we really do about it? Over time, do we handle community engagement in a different way? Those are really tough questions that all we can do is continue to talk to developers, talk to studios, understand what happens out there. That's the best we can do right now, is sort of try to learn from it.
Is that something that you've come across personally? Like for any projects that you've been involved in the feedback that you're getting back from the community themselves?
It's interesting. As a content creator, yes, I've had a small amount of that. I'm in a position where, nobody's going to go to my boss because I don't have a boss, or nobody's going to try to do a, fire this guy campaign. I've done one indie game of my own, but it was for kids, so the kids haven't been too mean. Although kids are kind of mean sometimes.
Kids are horrible. Don't stick up for them.
But, they can't swat me or anything like that. So, but as a content creator, I'm on YouTube. You can see what goes on in the comments section. I tell people, as half of a joke, I say, I work on the internet. You can't hurt my feelings. But I mean, it's not really true when people say that, of course. I learned that phrase from a Marine who said, "I'm a Marine, you can't hurt my feelings." And I thought, that is the most badass thing I've ever heard. And I'm going to start telling people stuff like that.
It's easy
but
to back
it doesn't, it's not true. We all get hurt by comments and the personal work we do that gets torn up. So yeah, I've had a small degree of it. I expect some of it over the book at some point. You try to find the constructive feedback where it exists, and you try to move on. It's the best you can do.
Yeah.
Well, I did see the kids. Was it a kid game jam?
Game jam.
I did. I ran a game jam for kids games at one time after I made my own. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that something that you've? Have you got kids? Is that something you've got them involved in as well?
I have a son who is now 6, and he'll be 7 in half a year. When he was only 1 or 2, I made an indie game that taught him letters and numbers. That was the whole thing. I wanted to create something for him to play with on my phone, just beep, boop, boop, and play around. And it turned out to be a sort of a powerful teaching tool, so I fleshed it out over the course of like half a year and released it in the app stores for other kids. It didn't make a killing. It wasn't a hugely successful project, but it was something I was proud of and very happy with. And I got to go speak about it at a few grade schools and things like that. So it was a really nice experience. Right. And I thought, there just isn't enough of this. We have a big community full of game developers, people who are learning, people who want to join new teams and stuff. So I said, why don't we have a short event. It actually wasn't short for a game jam. It was over 2 weeks because I didn't want people to crunch over it. But I invited them to make something small and simple for the benefit of younger kids. And it was pretty open-ended. And I loved that. I haven't done it annually, although I would like to kind of pick that back up. That was a pretty fun experience.
Yeah, because there's, I think with, there's quite a lot of charity work that goes on for like streamers and, playing huge amounts of a certain game, Desert Bus or whatever, for hours on end to just to raise money. But I think that, introducing coding and how to actually develop and make games, and introducing that to kids. Because I think for me, I suppose, I'm an old man now, and, looking at, how to make a game, it's incomprehensible to me. I wouldn't even know where to begin. But, I think that starting, or at least opening it up to kids to say, you start with the simple things. If you take an interest in it, then obviously that's when you would look to further education would be to look at development, programming, and then because it's like with my old housemate, his old job, they were hiring staff, but it was for me it was because again I don't really know the ins and outs of how to use any of this kind of software. So I always figured that getting into the industry itself would be impossible for someone like me, unless I wanted to be a tester or something like that. And frankly, I've got no interest in...
You're already doing that for free, so...
Kind of.
It's a tough life, yeah.
Yeah, but also, bug reports and playing the same room at the same level for, 6 weeks straight. I can't imagine that being particularly fun. But, it was... so obviously they're looking for programmers and scriptwriters and things like that, and people with experience and an education that kind of backs it up. But there's other avenues into that. There was like customer service and social media. Yeah. So I think that if you wanted to get into the gaming industry as a whole, I don't think it's just a case of you need to be able to make an entire landscape on Unity or develop 1,000 tools through Unreal. As long as you can, like you say, as long as it's something you're passionate about, you've got some kind of, oh, hello, we've got a visitor in the room.
There he is.
Hello.
There he goes.
Hey, bud.
Say hi.
Hi,
Hey.
Hey.
my name's William.
How's it
Hey,
going,
William.
man?
Can you get on your PE call?
Yeah,
Okay, thanks, buddy. He's late to class.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to jump in just because it popped into my head. With a lot of, obviously, Dan's talking about like the ins and outs of creating games and how much effort it takes to create games, which is too much for Dan to even comprehend. But
Yeah, sure.
What does somebody who can create games? What do you think of stuff like Dreams on the PlayStation and stuff, which is kind of advertising itself as a game creation tool, but obviously to the point that you can just do it with a controller?
I'm sorry, your video dropped out for like 5 seconds there. So if you can like sort of reiterate the question, I can better speak.
Sorry.
To
So,
or I can guess.
yeah. So, sorry, I think I just kind of lagged out a bit there. But with what does, as somebody in the industry as yourself, what do you think of stuff like Dreams on the PlayStation, where it's the whole main purpose of that was you can create your own games, you can create whatever you want, and in all fairness, it's quite a comprehensive little tool set for I think it's like £25, so it's like $20 or whatever.
Right.
But what do you think of stuff like that?
I love how far we've come in getting people involved in stuff like this, from the content inside games to the games themselves. I agree. There was a time when we were, I'm guessing we're not far apart in age, but when we were trying to learn this stuff, it took a book this big, and my hands are very far apart for listeners, that you could learn one version of one software application. It would take you months to get through the book, and there'd be a new book for a new version, and the stuff in the old book doesn't work anymore. It was hard to learn stuff like code, but also stuff like design, because they're talking about older games. It was a difficult time to jump in and really make yourself capable. I went to a tech school that did languages that were far out of date already. And there weren't any sort of content creation games like that. It wasn't like, we never thought if you give the tools to a kid or a teenager or even an adult, we didn't really expect great results to come back. And the truth is, there are a lot of people with talent and interest who can do great things with the right tools. The exception of that is like Doom mods and stuff like that. We saw very early on with like early PC games, people are capable of great things if they have what they need to do it. So what I tell people now, full-grown adults, if you don't know coding and you would like to, look at the stuff they've got out for kids right now. And don't be ashamed to pick up a book called Game Programming for Teens or for Kids. They make it easy, they make it compelling, and it's a better time than ever before to get into this stuff. I love every version of this, from Minecraft to Roblox, Dreams. The list goes on. I love every bit of it, and I hope they keep going that direction.
Yeah.
What are you... is there anything that you're currently playing and enjoying at the moment, whenever you've got a free moment to do so?
What am I playing lately? I tried Outriders the other night. It's always interesting to me because being in the role that I am in, I'm a little bit disconnected from like what's really going to hit with audiences and stuff. So when I heard everybody going, Outriders, yeah, I thought, okay, I got to see what this is and why this struck people this way. It's a cool game, seems very interesting and very fun. I was surprised at how dark it is, especially at the beginning, for people to have such a like bright, happy, like, yay, this is the best game. I thought, like, I wasn't ready for this. This is intense. but in a way, I'm glad to see people, finding stories that resonate with them and stuff. So I think that's cool. When I can, I've got friends, I'll just play Call of Duty and do some brainless, first-person shooter stuff. I play games on my phone all the time, so I'm out to try a little bit of everything. I'm a Game Pass subscriber. I want to see all I can see. Yeah, it's a great deal, right?
It's
big
amazing.
Advocates of Game Pass, we've got to say.
It's wonderful.
Well, I got I tried something called Pathway the other day, which is it's kind of like a turn-based adventure, like top-down, like isometric pixel. It seems like it's the most indie game, like all the elements sort of squished into one.
Yeah.
And it's I played it for probably a couple of hours or so. Had a couple of playthroughs and got my ass kicked. But then I was like, maybe this isn't for me. I'll go back to XCOM or something like that. And just uninstalled it. Perfect.
Game Pass is just the best thing to happen to video games.
Like all I wish is that with because there's obviously quite a lot of sort of indie games that do end up on there as well. Rain on Your Parade is something else that's just popped up on there as well, which is
just came
fun.
on.
I really quite like that. But it seems to have kind of like there's obviously like the big Microsoft titles that are going to show up on there day one, which is brilliant, and obviously any of the third parties that now they bought as well.
Bethesda and that.
Bethesda and exactly, and hopefully this deal with EA kind of throws more things at us as well. But then there's still the smatterings of kind of smaller games that maybe people wouldn't have heard of. Like Genesis Noir was a game that came on there a couple of months or so ago, and that was it's kind of like it's kind of like a visual novel more than anything. It's not really a game in that kind of sense, but it was so striking. And for a few pounds, I'm not sure what the equivalent is. I think it's probably about $8 or $9 or something like that.
Yeah.
For the monthly thing, to have that kind of exposure to, a whole myriad of games that you probably wouldn't have even heard of unless they were just there and then for you. It's just, for me, it's kind of the future. I mean, with the people that you've been talking to and the companies that they work for, do they see the kind of the Game Pass model of this like stream? It's what Stadia could have been if it was
if it was good
done properly. Yeah. Like is that, do they see that as being the future, that this kind of like huge sharing network platform?
It's a good question because I speak with a lot of studios who are trying new things as they emerge. I mean, obviously, it's a lot of moving targets. We had the Epic Store coming out. That was a big point of contention with Gearbox when I spoke with their guys, because it's another one of those things. Hey, I'm just a visual effects guy. I'm just an audio guy. don't yell at me about the Epic Store, right? So one thing I've wanted to do for a long time is talk to somebody on the Game Pass service, which I haven't got to do yet. They're notoriously locked down about sort of the terms and the compensation and stuff for that. So if there are any good, like, tell-all articles about that kind of thing, I haven't seen it yet. I would love to write one. I would probably abuse that opportunity because I'm just too curious about how that works on the back end. But developers are definitely aware of it. Studios are aware of it. I tried to set up several interviews with different studios who do it in the past, and somehow they always seem to not be available. Like, they can't quite, like, we just got bought by Microsoft, or we just put something on Game Pass, but we can't talk to you right now. Like, oh, okay. You know, I think they understand it. The way we consume everything is much different now. I was so excited to write a book, but you know, a big deal now on the Kindle store is they've got stuff like Kindle Unlimited, which is like their Game Pass. So I had to go, what's the future? Well, we're probably going to have more subscriptions where you can read everything from like Simon & Schuster or A-Press or whatever. So I thought, let's be part of that front end on the cutting edge and let me get on this, you know, book streaming thing.
Yeah.
So I think they're looking at it like that. If the terms are agreeable, they go with it. The only downside is, like you said, it's great for us. I can have a bite-sized, like, one-night experience with a game and uninstall it, and I don't even care. If I never play it again, I can at least tell people, like, I tried it, it was fun, I'm not out $15 or $20 or whatever, but for the studios, I think they're going to have to change the way they do business just a little bit to account for all of that bite-sized play, because they're relying on players to have a long relationship with their games. I think this is going to change that a little bit in certain cases.
Yeah,
I think so. I think it depends on, you know, what percentage of the subscription fees that Microsoft are getting for Game Pass is actually going to each individual game and the amount of use that people are getting out of it. So,
right.
You know, if it is something that's just, you know, people try it for a couple of nights, then uninstall it, you know, they're not really... Should they be getting as big of a piece of the pie as someone who's... I mean, Anthem, for example's sake, like, Anthem is something that should have been... it should have been... I own huge. It, so I mean, it should have been the best thing ever.
Right.
And something, because it's just... It's so short term. It just seems to be, you know, it's this instant gratification. It looks cool. It feels fine. Anything else, though, and it just kind of flops from there. And for something like Anthem showing up on Game Pass, I think that is a much better place for it. I would have much rather have played Anthem for free and not been bothered about the fact that it's not supported from that point onwards than pay too much. I can't remember how much it was, but it certainly wasn't. It was
right.
for what it actually is at the moment. It was too much, unfortunately. But
I think it's another case of being promised too much and delivering too little.
Probably so, but I think that if you want to kind of drag out these lifetimes for these games, then you know, once they've got your money, there's no real obligation for them to actually follow through with it.
Yeah, but then
actually say, yeah, we are going to support you for the next 5-10 years to make sure that this thing is interesting. Whereas if it was something that was coming exclusively out on Game Pass, say, and the more content that you included, the more you got people to play that game, the more that you would get from Microsoft from their subscription base and from the funds that they were pulling in from that, which is significant. You know, surely that would drive more publishers, I suppose, rather than the developers to kind of actually have these long-term goals for games, rather than just something on paper that's just we're going to support this for the next 10 years, knowing full well they're really not going to do.
Then you got stuff like Warframe though, and Warframe's still free to play, and I think that there was a big update for that. I think it was last week, maybe the week before. They've had like the new, I think it's Tales of Talos almost. I don't know, I haven't played it for years. It's a bad example, but that's a free-to-play game that's still being updated like most months, like every few months or something like that. And I fully expected Anthem to be that kind of regular, like developers getting in on the action and updating the stuff and
like
stuff.
Destiny and
Destiny is another good example of it. And I wouldn't put the blame on the developers themselves rather than EA.
It's BioWare. I mean, if you're looking for a more tried and tested company, you'd be hard pressed to find them.
I still think Anthem Flying was still a better Iron Man game than the Avengers.
Look, video game tie-ins we're not discussing here because frankly we all know, and I think we're all very much in agreement that they're all shit.
X-Men Origins Wolverines was excellent. It was better than the movie.
I can't believe we've never had a good Iron Man game, right? I think about it all the time, like how it's so perfect, but we've just not done it. I don't get it.
They nailed it with Anthem. I don't know if anyone's heard of this game, Anthem, but it's just like being Iron Man.
Just think of it that way, yeah.
Yeah.
Like the Avengers, like the Iron Man flying in the Avengers is
awful.
It's fine, but it's
it.
so restricted because you like your Iron Man flying through corridors in a building. It just doesn't feel right. Like you say, it should just be it should be something the scale of Anthem, but it's it's a desert or something, and you're flying around and blowing stuff up. It seems like it's such a simple thing to. Like, I mean, I think it's what they attempted with the tie-in games, but I think it was wasn't it Sega or someone who made the?
I'm not sure if it was Sega. I think it also.
I don't recall.
I think they're also only played in like Happy Meals and stuff as well for the Iron Man movie game.
Yeah, like it wasn't particularly good. But there's on the flip side though, as people may see from Todd's Twitter, Godzilla fan.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I'm a big monster fan. I got my Rampage shirt on.
I did notice. Yeah, that's cool.
I own the small Rampage cabinet out in our game room. I love just dorky stuff like that. I really like that stuff.
Well, have you seen Godzilla vs Kong?
I'm waiting for the right night. My wife works a lot, and I'm waiting for a night we can both watch and really let it blow our minds. Probably this week, I would guess, is when we'll see it.
I'm very happy that that's the answer, and that it's like you want to watch it, and your wife wants to watch it as well. Because when I watched the trailer, my wife turned and she went, "It's not very realistic, is it?" It's like, it's not meant to be realistic.
Yeah.
Compared to what exactly?
Exactly.
Big lizard, big monkey. I mean.
That's not how it would go.
No, she wasn't. I really enjoyed it. I mean, I do like Godzilla and I like King Kong and stuff, but like not as much as. Yeah. Actually, you're very clearly a fan, and Dan's a massive monster movie fan, and I like them, but they're not. It's not like the top of my list of movies and stuff. But I really enjoyed Godzilla versus Kong. I really did. But it was a really good film, except the human bits.
I think this. Well, that's always going to be it's always going to be the case though. But I think like the Japanese ones are just a lot more wacky, and they're a lot more open to kind of weird things going on, the submarines and time travel and God knows what else. Like I think as soon as like the Hollywood versions of this they start to get wackier and wackier, that's when I think it'll be like pinnacle of what this is. Because the first one's like it's what Elizabeth Olsen and what's his name, Aaron Taylor Clark or something.
Yeah, Bryan Cranston.
Sort of, running about for an hour and a half.
Right.
I don't care.
Or the Matthew Broderick one.
Matthew Broderick one jumps to mind. Yeah, funny.
We don't want to talk about that one either, frankly. But though, Todd, I think we've taken up more than enough of your time. So again, I wanted to thank you for being a part of Podcast versus Player today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. This has been everything I was hoping for. This has been great.
Well, where can people go and find you? Social medias, where can they go and find the book if they want to buy themselves a copy?
Sure. An easy place to go is my website, codewriteplay.com. That'll get you to the podcast, the book, the articles I write, and I'm on Twitter if you're around, Mechatodzilla with 1D and 2 L's, and I'll chat your ear off about just about anything. I'm there quite a bit.
Well, Todd, thank you again. Callum, have you got anything you want to add before we wrap this up?
No, just again, thank you very much for joining us, and hopefully we can get you on again sometime.
I'd like that.
Thank you very much. So would we. Me more than Dan, though.
Yeah, for sure.
We're very competitive.
I can appreciate that. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Fucking drugs, piss off, you motherfucker.
Get the poo demons.
Oh, God. It's in flower. Fucking Christ.
Why did it have to do that?
Why is there not, like, dudes everywhere?
There will be.
You know me, I like dudes everywhere.
It does.
Yes.
I'm the biggest Doom fan.
Doom World. The first time I ever played Doom was at my English teacher's house. Dan,
See, right.
listen
I'm
to
so
me,
sorry.
Dan.
Oh, I died, Callum.